The Vikings had a different dynamic in the divisional round. They had a hard-fought win unexpectedly in the wild card round of the playoffs, and that wasn't enough to carry them over the top. They lost 27-10 to the San Francisco 49ers. Now they have some decisions to make, some big decisions to make. It looks like Mike Zimmer is going to remain as the head coach, Peter, but he's entering the final year of his contract. Here he is at his end-of-season press conference addressing his expectation that talks aimed at extending his deal will begin in the not-too-distant future.
Like I said a couple weeks ago when we was talking about this, I love these players, this organization. The owners have been outstanding to me. So I believe that there'll be conversations here in the near future, and whatever happens, I'm happy with it.
I mean, look, the bottom line is you either have to pay the guy or move on from him. I don't like the idea of letting him coach his lame duck season, although it's happened frequently. It is a distraction, as we saw, or it can be a distraction, as we saw this year with Jason Garrett in Dallas. It constantly comes up, what are you going to do, what are you going to do, what are you going to do? I think the Vikings know at this point whether they want to keep Mike Zimmer or not, and the indications are they'll find a way to try to extend his deal. But, Peter, of the guys who have 1 year left on their contracts, GM Rick Spielman, head coach Mike Zimmer, quarterback Kirk Cousins, running back Dalvin Cook, who would you make your top priority in locking up beyond this coming season?
I'm tempted to say Cousins, but I think I would rather say Mike Zimmer. And I think the Zimmer thing is going to be difficult, Mike, just because Mike Zimmer's a competitive guy. And I think every coach that has to re-sign now who's had success, Mike Zimmer has this team as a contender every year. Now, obviously, they haven't even sniffed a Super Bowl, or been close, but they have been a contender every July when they come to training camp. So now you say, if I were Mike Zimmer's agent, my first shot out of the box to Mark and Ziggy Wilf would be, let's talk about Matt Rule's contract. All right. And let's just start this thing at $8.7 million a year. And by the way, we're not signing for $8.7 million a year. Let's talk about a fair contract for a guy who's had this team in contention at the end of every season he's coached virtually. And so I think it's going to be difficult. I think the Cousins contract is going to be exceedingly hard. Just because, are you going to ask Kirk Cousins to take a pay cut? Probably not. And now you have to ask yourself, do you want to sign Kirk Cousins for the sort of the near future at $30 million a year? That's one of the questions. Like, I think a lot of Vikings fans would say, even though we know that he's not the best quarterback in the league, we need a quarterback, and we don't want to start from ground zero. So I think a lot of people would say you just got to pay the man. But when you pay the man, I think that is a really, really tough signing, Mike.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter, because the guy has limitations. And as we see more and more mobile quarterbacks and what you can do when you combine the ability to throw the ball effectively with the ability to move around, to escape pressure, to extend the play, Kirk Cousins cannot extend the play. The only way he's effective is if the blocking is holding back the pass rush, which doesn't always happen. Every game, you're going to have multiple occasions where somebody gets through and you've got to deal with it if you're the quarterback. They have the play actions and the bootlegs that only work if the running game is firing on all cylinders. It's a very basic offense. They have to replace Kevin Stefanski. My guess is it's going to be Gary Kubiak or his son Clint who takes over the offense. And they need a new defensive coordinator. It's apparently, possibly, maybe going to be Adam Zimmer, Mike's son, who's been the linebackers coach for the last 6 years. So, they have some adjustments to make. They have some big decisions looming, and I agree with you on Cousins. You don't just pay him because he's due to be paid or because the markets continue to grow. What does he really give you? He gives you a guy who can win when you're playing against a lesser team. But can he win when you're facing a team with a great defense? Can he win? Can he go point for point with a great offense like the Rams last year when they weren't able to beat them in a shootout in LA on a Thursday night? I just think even though they beat the Saints, and you got to give them credit for that, The fact that they lost so convincingly and could get nothing going offensively against the 49ers makes me more inclined to believe that what we saw last week was not some new development and some new reality for Kirk Cousins. It was just, closer to an aberration. And you'll get those from time to time. But to truly be a contender, you got to have a quarterback who can deliver far more often than once a year in a big spot.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.